Bonjour, bonjour. Jour 3, un peu plus de fatigue. J'espère que vous avez en tout cas passé une très bonne soirée hier soir. Nous, oui, mais... Et on va terminer en fait avec un sujet phare aujourd'hui qui est autour de l'influence et la désinformation. La cybersécurité, vous connaissez, je pense que vous êtes tous confrontés à ce sujet, et notamment dans le retail. Donc il y a Jérôme Saiz et Roy Zinman, je vais les laisser se présenter eux-mêmes parce que je risque de faire un impair, qui vont vous mettre en lumière comment Team Jorge, justement, a mis en lumière la puissance et l'impact en fait, de la désinformation. Jérôme, Roy, c'est à vous.
Hello. Hello, people of e-commerce. Today, for this final conference, we've chosen to tell you about a dark art, the art of disinformation, information manipulation. Why? Maybe you wonder, why did we choose to tell you about that? Well, because if your business actually rely on information and your reputation, as most or all online business do, then you are very much exposed to this type of attack. My name is Jérôme Saiz, and I'm a specialist in cybersecurity. But then, behind cyber, there is this whole world, dark world of not technical attacks, but information and manipulation attacks. Maybe you've heard of Team Jorge, this company that was selling thousands of fake accounts that could go for a fee, of course, they are mercenaries, that could go and disrupt any type of commerce, of business online. It can be you. It can be your business. If you have a competitor that is actually less ethic than you are, then these people can be rented out, and they will go and smear your reputation and make it look maybe that your products are dangerous. I could talk a bit about like that, but really, we wanted to offer you the best. And we wanted to offer you an expert on these matters. He will introduce himself, but just a quick anecdote. Yesterday night, after midnight, we were out having a drink with Roy, and he has like a teenager. You know, he had his head down on his smartphone, and he was all excited. He was all excited because he found a new campaign, misinformation, disinformation campaign that was pretty innovative, according to him. And I said, okay, it's nice, tell me about it. And then this morning at breakfast, I found him with his phone down here and telling me, oh yeah, new things, it's new, then it's not as exciting as we thought, but you know, this and this. You know, the guy just never stops thinking about it. So he's the star of the show today. That's Roy. Roy, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jérôme. My name is Roy Zinman. I served for 25 years in military intelligence unit 8200. My last role there, I was head of OSINT, open source intelligence collection. And since I retired, I work in cybersecurity and open source intelligence with a specialty in countering disinformation. I worked in the trust and safety industry, building the anti-disinformation proficiency for one of the biggest social media platforms. And then when COVID started, I volunteered to the CTI League, which was an organization protecting the health industry against cyber attacks and also disinformation attacks. And today, that's my specialty, countering disinformation. Now, what Jérôme told you about, you know, I think in both our countries, there's kind of a lot of protest right now. And there are third parties that are trying to use this to aggravate, to add to the tensions. And what I found was a fake photo of a riot with all kinds of people hitting each other and so on. And I was so excited because I thought it was made by AI. Eventually, I found the original photo, and it was simple Photoshop, but it shows how far people are willing to go to create manipulation, to manipulate our opinions, and to set us against each other, to rip apart our societies.
Yeah. And if you feel at times that our society is getting more tense, more violent, it may also be that a third party, external third party, is actually putting oil on the fire. And that's exactly what we're going to talk today, but applied to your business world. So, Roy, Team Jorge showed that it was a real industry about, there was a real industry about misinformation. Is it just a one-off occurrence, or is there something more to that? Is this a real business?
Yes, so unfortunately, disinformation is a service, or it has other names like black PR, or even PR agencies that seems legitimate, but they do go a little bit in the gray area. It's something that has been going on for a few years now. According to Meta research, by the end of 2019, which is before COVID, there were at least 27 companies that they targeted that did this around the world. What's interesting about the Team Jorge revelations is that really the journalist, a very brave journalist, managed to really penetrate the company and learn about how it works. We've seen that in the past in Russia, where brave journalists entered the Internet Research Agency, and we got a glimpse of how these attacks are being perpetrated from the inside.
There is footage. There is footage of meetings.
There was footage of meetings and Zoom and demonstrations and so on. So we saw how it's being done, and I think it made something that is a kind of virtual danger really look
real.
Really,
actually, yeah.
Really show itself.
And it shows too that anyone can actually go and contract these capacities to be used against your business, and that's really important, and that should be the key takeaway from this conference. You mentioned gray and dark. What is the difference between gray and dark PR or information services?
Okay, so dark is what's illegal. So illegal is that hacking into accounts of a company, hacking into its data, stealing data is, of course, things that are illegal. And some competitors from other places with lower ethical standards can use this.
That's what I deal with usually. My day-to-day is bad actors, bad competitors trying to hack illegally. But you deal with a much more broader situation with the gray then.
Yeah, so a lot of things are not quite illegal. Photoshopping is not illegal. But it can manipulate. It can manipulate public opinion. Anonymous accounts are not illegal. In Twitter, you can open an anonymous account completely legally, but you can create manipulation with it. So this is kind of the gray area that we are trying to deal with.
So we're dealing with totally legitimate tools being associated and used with a malicious intent.
Exactly.
Okay, that's great. There will be a QCN, you'll be a questionnaire at the end, so take notes. Roy, how any business represented here can be dragged into such an information war? Is this very rare to be dragged there, or are there many opportunities that we can be hit?
So actually, it's more common than we think, and most of the times we think about this danger as targeting societies, targeting countries, but actually it can affect business, and it becomes more and more often. So I'll give you one example from not too long ago.
We have a slide for that.
If we can show the example. So the company Bonduelle of conserved food, and this company, we saw there was a campaign on vKontakte, which is the Russian Facebook, of sending gifts to the Russian soldiers on the front in Ukraine with Bondwell food, Bondwell products. And of course, the company had to deny the report in the same day, but the damage was already done of this photo. And this is a scenario that I would call getting caught in the crossfire. So sometimes companies are being targeted just because they're in the middle of geopolitical conflict.
Yeah, because Bondwell doesn't have anything against Russian government or any other government, just want to sell beans, actually.
Yes, and these are the most even dangerous situations, because if you're attacked by the FSB or by some other kind of disinformation, state-level attack, if you're, for example, in the energy sector, if you're, for example, in other sectors that are targeted, you have higher geopolitical risk. And if you operate in these countries, you need to understand that you have a risk there.
And this is very important for all of you that think that you don't have anything to fear from this type of attack because you do not interest and you don't warrant interest of anybody. But because if you're a typical French brand, let's say you're in cosmetics, for example, the simple fact that you are a poster child of France, you know, and the way of life or whatever, might make you a target, even though you don't care about politics or geopolitics.
So, but there are also other scenarios. I call it the five scenarios in which organizations can be targeted. So the first of them is ideological. So, for example, we know there are many very strong ideological groups: Greens, vegans, the healthcare industry,
Greens,
anti-vaccination,
Greens, reds, yellow. I mean,
and
every color.
In this case, sometimes a campaign is organic, but sometimes you need to understand that this is only cover for someone trying to use. And we see that a lot in cybersecurity. In cybersecurity, many attacks are by anonymous or some kind of hacktivist, but it's only a cover for a state-level attack. So how do you know if it's a cover?
That was my question.
Yeah.
How do you know? How do you know that when something, some people are throwing mud at you on the social medias, it's really coming from people just wanting to throw mud at you, or is it coordinated attack?
So I think many people in the audience are dealing with marketing, and they know the difference between organic and inorganic. In our industry, we call it coordinated inauthentic behavior, CIB. Okay, and there are patterns to this coordinated inauthentic behavior: fake profiles, fake augmentation, fake traffic, and so on, bots using automations, all kinds of signs to show that this is inauthentic. And if it's inauthentic, it's probably an attack made by some sophisticated actor.
Most of you might have been confronted to bots. Maybe raise a hand if you have if you suspect that you have been confronted to bots trying to actually hit your e-commerce site. Yeah, a few of you. Bots are maybe the easiest to detect, and there are solutions even that can help detect bots. But these fake profiles with people beyond it, with an agenda, are much harder to detect. So let's keep on with the others way.
Yeah, so if you're a publicly traded company, there are stock manipulations. And it's now, there will always have been stock manipulations. The traders call it pump and dump or short and distort. But we've seen, and we'll see examples later on, but we've seen it more and more lately because social media, Twitter, Reddit, it makes it so easy to create a rumor and play with the stock prices. And this is also, if you're publicly traded, that's a really big dangers. You also, as I said, if you compete with companies with a problem with ethics, okay? They can hire this kind of black PR company. They can attack your company. There's a famous case tried in Israel of a baby food company that was going into Facebook groups and telling that the other product is not so good and so on, and a lot of millions of legal fees.
And bad reputation sticks on you. Even though it's fake, over and over, if you're being dragged and dragged and dragged into issues like that, even though it's fake, it sticks on you and it muddies your reputation and your sales, of course.
So, lastly, just like in cyber attacks, you can perform a cyber attack without hacking anything. So imagine, for example, you have your CEO has a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page, but he has also another Facebook page. Someone opened a Facebook page that copies with his picture, with all his details. Every post he posts, he posts as well. Every post, he posts as well. He does some advertising. He has even more followers. And then you get an email. I will post this and this on this profile if you don't pay. So these kind of attacks, criminal attacks, also can happen in the information space, not only in hacking.
And everything Roy is telling you there has been seen for real in the wild. It's not just pure speculation. That's why it matters. Okay, so now I guess we're convinced. On our specialty in cybersecurity, we know how to protect. We have frameworks, we have tools, we have solutions. How do you protect against such campaigns that are much more ethereal? There is nothing really concrete with that.
Okay, so this is something very important to talk about. You cannot stop these cognitive attacks completely, and sometimes you cannot stop them because you don't control the perimeter. Actually, you can't stop 100% of cyber attacks, right? We've seen that.
You just pull the plug, stop working.
Yeah,
everybody's on vacation.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
But that is no reason to say we can't do anything about it. There is a lot you can do to be better prepared and to respond better to these kind of attacks. And this is what we call in the cybersecurity industry the kill chain.
Yeah.
Because every such information operation, disinformation attack on your organization, it has a few stages. You build your narrative, you create all the assets you're going to use.
All the fakes, actually, yeah.
Yes, and then you deploy the attack. You amplify it, you create the impact, and then you also have sometimes to obfuscate, to cover your tracks, so they don't know who did it or not sue you. So all these stages, there are counter that you can deploy. You can try and disrupt and minimize the results of the attack in every one of these stages.
So now we are familiar with the landscape. Maybe we can get a little bit more precise and understand what you can do before, and then we'll move on what you can do during and after the attack. But what can we do before to prepare for this type of attack?
Okay, so like in every crisis and like in cybersecurity, the more you prepare, the better you are protected, and most likely
it's sad but true.
The other company will be hit and not you. So how do you become better prepared for this kind of cognitive attack? So the first rule is to understand what is what we call the attack surface. To understand what is your risk. Do you have geopolitical risk, as we spoke before? Do you have any kinds of dirty secrets in your company? Try to be transparent about it. If you can't be transparent about it, have a better security about these secrets and so on. The second thing is...
And the risk moves, actually. If you're not at risk on a geopolitical aspects right now, you might be in 6 months. So you need to have teams that actually monitor that kind of thing.
Now, have your team trained on identifying disinformation attack, identifying fake profiles, identifying fake photos, identifying narratives, and viral narratives. And many of you have, in your marketing department, have social media listening, social media monitoring teams. You have to train them also for this. If you don't have the team to train, maybe hire a team, an external team, to monitor for you. And also you have to train your communications team, because responding to this kind of attack is not like responding to a normal PR or normal communications crisis.
There is a risk of the Streisand effect, and so we need to know when to respond and not to respond.
Yes, and the last thing, which is most important, is to build what I call the blue network, which is you have to have the possibility to counter the attack with your own voice. And many companies succeeded in building their own organic communities. We saw that very effective in Tesla, for example. I spoke with, here in the conference, with someone from a cosmetics company that have a DIY cosmetics thing. And they also have like a very organic, very strong community of users. You can use these users to respond to this kind of attacks. So nurture, build these relations with this community. Tell them your narratives all the time, and you will be better prepared when the attack comes.
Okay, and know when the attack comes. What do you do?
Okay, sometimes whatever you do, the attack hits you, and then you apply the response, like in cybersecurity incident response. It's the same thing if you get a ransomware message, your computers have been encrypted. Also, when you detect this kind of attack, you need to respond. Now, there are a few ways to respond to this kind of attacks. First of all, you need to analyze the situation, understand what is the impact, understand what can happen to you, and deploy the right attack. Sometimes it's better to ignore, right? It doesn't have impact. But if it has impact, you have to respond. What can you do? 3 main things that you can do to respond to information attacks. One is unmask. Unmask or uncover. If you can investigate, find the fake accounts, find the fake narratives, and you tell, okay, this is fake. You debunk.
So
That's
you can
the
troll
word.
the
The
troll.
Americans use the word debunk, and you show, okay, this is the false narrative that is going on right now, but this is the true narrative. And this is what they're trying to do. You unmask them, and you minimize their effectiveness. Another method is to take it down. If they use what we call CIBs, coordinated inauthentic behavior, usually, if it's in normal social networks, you can take it down. Meta will take it down, Twitter will take it down. You have to have an effective process to report and make them take it down.
It's a good idea to train that. I mean, if you're in the middle of the incident and you don't know who to call at Twitter or Facebook and what to ask and what is possible or not, you will have a harder time, much harder time than if you train for that and you have processes for that. True.
Yeah, but if it's on TikTok,
yeah,
maybe harder. If it's on Telegram, you have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So this is and the third is, as I said, to respond, to broadcast your own narrative through your blue network. So if you have trained on these scenarios and your C-level understand them, after you analyze, you can respond and you can really get much better results, minimize the damage, and every hour, every day that passes when false narratives are hitting you, they impact your bottom line, so it's very important.
We see it's a true crisis, and my specialty is crisis management, cyber crisis management, but as I hear Roy, I get the feeling that it's exactly the same. You need to have a crisis cell. I mean, when something like that happens to you, you need to put the right people with the right mind and the right tools in the same place, and you need to let them think it through and take decision. I mean, it's a real crisis, and you have to treat it and address it like a real crisis, I guess. True? So you actually see crisis teams going to work in this case of attack?
Yeah, usually, and you saw that also in cybersecurity, we come in too late.
Yeah.
Because really the most important thing is be prepared, as I said before.
Yeah.
Is prepare your systems, is train, is understand the problem, understand your risk, analyze your risk, understand what narratives can hit you, and so on.
And so what can we do after that? I mean, let's say we ride it through, we rode it through, and now we want to get the benefits of this experience to make sure it doesn't happen again.
So if you already experienced this kind of attack, it's very important to debrief, to understand what exactly happened. Now, there is something that I don't recommend, and is trying to go after who did it to you.
In cybersecurity, it's exactly the same. Don't try to hack the hacker.
Because many executives that I meet, they say, I want to find who did it. I want to take them to court. I want to sue them.
The cowboy
execs. It's very, very hard to attribute these attacks. They open Anonymous, they work with proxies, they work with third parties, they hire third-party companies. It's very difficult, unless you're the Interpol, to find out who is behind the attack. And you will waste a lot of energy, a lot of resources, when the most important thing is to respond correctly, to fix the narratives, and to protect your reputation. So this is very, very important, but you also need to debrief to understand where were your gaps, what kind of gaps did your adversary use, how can you detect it earlier, how can you respond better next time, which process you need to improve, what do you need to invest in terms of monitoring of social media and so on, maybe invest in organic communities, building your communities that are for you, that will deliver your message when the time comes, and so on. So this is also very important, and to put the recommendations in a very clear way into a working program. Once you have this program, you can improve, you can be more resilient to this kind of attacks, although I'm saying we cannot prevent them from happening.
When we were discussing this type of attacks, we came, of course, to the conclusion that an attacker is not bound to just doing information attacks or cyber attacks. Now, imagine if both types of attacks actually happen to you at the same time. Imagine you have a production plant and you produce your own products that you sell online. Imagine that a cyber attack is shutting down your production, and at the same time, an information attack is telling the world that you've shut down your plants because it was highly dangerous for your consumers to use the product. Do you feel that it will be a nightmare to get out of this situation, because you have a narrative that is confirmed by the fact that the plants are stopped? And if you do tell the world that it's a cyber attack, nobody will believe you. How would you do in such a case?
One of the biggest challenges is that the best lies are 90% true.
True, yeah.
Right? And you know, some actors, I won't say names of countries, are really experts in taking some
a bit of truth,
uncomfortable truth and spicing it with information or with false information to create the false narratives. This is why you have to do the analysis of how you respond. Sometimes, just to make it go away, it would raise more suspicions.
Yeah.
So if I said you can sometimes take down a network or take down something or just disregard it, sometimes it will create more damage, because people will say, people are shutting this down, people are hushing down. You know, in the US, they had really, they made a mistake, the Biden administration. They set up an agency for countering disinformation. Yeah. And they did this whole move, and
we do have the same in France too.
And they, there is an agency, but you know, it was less of in the US. I think it's more of a problem with the political sides. I think in France there is a little bit
There
more
is a true effort
understanding.
to actually disarm these kind of tools.
And the framing was a little better.
Yeah.
In the US, they brought in an expert which I really admire, someone who studied information operations in Eastern Europe and very knowledgeable, and put her, but she was also a bit political. And then right away it started, this is the Ministry of Truth, they are shutting down, and there are very strong conspiracy groups in the US, and it was a failure because people were saying,
It was
okay,
ironic, actually, that this type of
the
initiative
government is
has been
controlling the information environment, they're trying to hush everything down. So this is something...
So even the specialists can fall to the same techniques applies against them. Well, I think the main takeaway that we can take from this session is that you truly need first to be aware that this type of attacks actually happen and might happen to you. And then you need to train your people, and you need to take that as a true crisis and be able to go in crisis mode even for attacks that are just focused on information. Roy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's really important to understand that the attackers, they don't, someone who wants to attack you, they don't make the distinction between hacking, between information attack. They will do whatever they need to make the profit, and to, if they can build on that to hurt your reputation, they will do that. So just take it in mind and be prepared.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you all. We have time for a few questions. If you do have questions, just raise your hand, and a mic will get to you. First row.
Okay.
Here, sorry. And the mic, oh, we need a mic? Okay, I thought you had a mic, actually. Okay.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. Two questions. Why these types of attacks are likely to be more and more frequent? And are there
Okay,
some
we're going to mic.
Why these types of attacks are likely to be more and more frequent? Why is it growing? And are there some technologies that could help fighting or countering this kind of attacks?
So I think it's something that we all understand. The more that we are reliant on the online environments to get our information, on social media to get our sources of information, to get our shopping, right? We are buying through social media and through the digital arena. It's easier to manipulate with technology. And even technology is making advances. AI, you can fake text, you can fake pictures, much easier. So I think this will create many opportunities for bad actors. Also in the geopolitical sense, there are many tensions today that we are only seeing an increase in this kind of attack.
Well, ChatGPT would be perfect to write about, millions of fake comments. Then you have to input them on the platform, but there are tools for that too. So the only limiting factor right now is writing the fake comments, and ChatGPT would be real good for that. Another question, maybe? Nope. Everybody's eager to get back home. I guess you are. Well, thank you. Thank you to be with us for this last session.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Roy.
Thank you.